Thanks for tuning in to Veterans Voices. I'm your host, Joshua Zebley, and my co-host is Elena Kim. In the studio with me is Buck Carmichael. Today we'll be talking about navigating the Board of Veterans Appeals. If you want to join the conversation, follow the QR code on the screen. We have three experts to help with this complex subject today. Zmae Raymundo, District Manager for the California Department of Veterans Affairs, Veterans Advocate Jim Rodonga, and Katrina J. Eagle from the Veterans Law Office of Katrina J. Eagle. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So, Buck, this show is like the second part of a show we did back in August 2024, which was, I believe we called it My Claim Was Denied, Now What? So that had a couple different options. Now this is going to take it to the next level, right? Can you explain that show and what we're doing here today?
Absolutely. So last show we dug into, what happens if your claim is denied. If you want to introduce new evidence, if you see that there's an error in the way that the VA made the decision, what do you do next? There's options. We discussed something called appellate rights, or what to do if you have a time frame, or you have to file an appeal or a supplemental review or higher level reviews within a certain amount of time. So this episode, we're going to really dig into the Board of Veterans Appeals, the next step, a higher level, taking it away from the VA and allowing a law judge to actually take a look at the claim. And luckily, we're with three fantastic guests with a lot of experience with this. I'd just like to take a couple of moments, if we could, to introduce the guests. If we could start with Katrina, could you tell us a little bit about what you do and the work that you do with veterans?
Sure, and hello everyone, and thank you so much for having me. This is a very important topic. I am a veterans law attorney. I have been representing veterans. Next year will be 30 years of representing veterans, and talking about this issue of how to navigate the Board of Veterans Appeals is near and dear to my heart, because 30 years ago I started as a veteran service officer with Vietnam Veterans of America, working on the first floor of the Board of Veterans Appeals, helping veterans who were their POA, their power of attorney was Vietnam Veterans of America. So it's kind of coming full circle to be able to talk to veterans today about how to deal with the Board of Veterans Appeals and best practices. So thank you so much for having me.
Sure, and Jim, please.
Good morning. Glad to be here, or afternoon. I'm Jim Rodonga, and I work with Katrina at the law office. I am not an attorney. I'm a VA accredited claims agent. So I do fundamentally the same work as an attorney. And what our office handles is strictly appeals when a veteran has been denied compensation benefits, veteran or their family member. That's when our office will kind of get involved. We don't typically file initial claims and so on. So we're kind of experts in the appeals at both the regional office level and the Board of Veterans Appeals. We also work with VSOs, Veteran Service Officers, in California and around the country in assisting them on complex appeals matters. So when they need help, we try and offer them some training and advice and kind of help them move along.
And lastly, Zmae.
Hi, good afternoon. So I work with CalVet, and we have district offices co-located within the VA regional offices. So here in California, there's three. I'm in one of them in Oakland. Our office, we've got three teams. We've got a team that's designated specifically to work with CVSOs in our jurisdiction. So there are accredited representatives from the county veteran service offices, and we work with them. They usually work like the actual people working with the veterans, with you guys, like Buck for Contra Costa. And then we have the team that works with appeals, solely mainly working with appellants who have hearings before the board or making decisions on whether on what the next step is that they should take after a decision. And then we have a last team, the ones that we have representatives that go into state prisons to help with incarcerated veterans.
Thanks so much, Zmae, Katrina, and Jim, for being here. Hey, I had a question because Katrina, you said that you were an attorney who practiced VA law, and Jim, you said you were an accredited claims representative. There is a lot going on in the news these days about this like claim shark stuff. So can you break down like what is the difference between a lawyer, a VA accredited representative, and why is that important to our veterans at home? And Zmae, you're free to jump in on this conversation too, because I know you've got some experience and thoughts on it.
So may I go first, ladies?
Of course.
Thank you. Okay, that's a great question, Elena. Attorneys, agents like myself, and of course CVSOs are accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs. So they make sure we're properly trained, accountable for ethics, doing the right things, and so on. So they fundamentally control everything we do in order to protect veterans and make sure veterans and their family members are served properly. What's referred to as claim sharks are companies that operate outside of that accreditation. In other words, they're not recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs. They're just independent operators who work with veterans, but they don't have any, they're not accountable to VA. VA has no legal authority over them. And very importantly, they don't have any access to VA systems, VA information. As CVSOs, agents, attorneys, we all have access to all of the information we need to both file claims, appeals, and so on. We get to look at the same computer program that VA employees do. Everything that they do, every note they make, and so on, we have access to. And that is so vitally important in representing veterans and family members, is having access to that information and the relationship within VA. VA recognizes us as kind of partners. We all kind of work together for the benefit of veterans and their families. Outside companies don't have that. They're just kind of disconnected, and that's probably why there's some acronyms there.
So taking it back to the Board of Veterans Appeals, can a claim shark represent you at the Board of Veterans Appeals?
No, they can't. You have to be accredited by VA to represent at the Board of Veterans Appeals or at the VA at the regional office level. You must be accredited, otherwise VA, they just will ignore you.
Yeah, and I think that's important to loop into this conversation, right? Because we're going to be talking about the BVA today, the Board of Veterans Appeals, and we want to make sure that as you're considering who's going to help you along this process, you understand that once you get to this point, you're going to need to talk to a lawyer or an accredited claims representative, like the folks that we have on the call today.
Thank you for making that.
Elena, I'll add on to that just real quick. A veteran can proceed to the Board of Veterans Appeals pro se on their own. They don't have to have a representative. But if they do proceed with a representative, it must be that individual or office must be accredited by VA. So they don't need to have an attorney, and a lot of times they don't need an attorney. There's a lot of errors that the regional office level people make that don't require an attorney to get it fixed or to represent and explain it to the law judge at the Board of Veterans Appeals. But so I just wanted to clarify that. And we can talk a whole different segment about, the way veterans are being duped, unfortunately, and VA is on it and understands sometimes where the evidence is coming from and its invalidity, but that's for a different conversation. I just want to explain, unlike a lot of courts, you do need an attorney to represent you. At the Board of Veterans Appeals, you can proceed without an attorney or a veteran service officer or an accredited agent. They can proceed on their own. You don't have to have a representative necessarily.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have a lengthy discussion. Stay with us.
We all make more than 35,000 decisions a day. Most are small, but some can be life-changing.
When it comes to taking care of yourself, the most important choices can be hard to make. Like having a tough conversation instead of ignoring a buddy's call.
Or being there for support, not assuming things will just get better.
Or fighting through challenges rather than giving up.
And while we all face thousands of choices every day, there's one that can make all the difference. Today, make the decision to be there for the veterans in your life, for your community, for yourself. Learn more at BeThereForVeterans.com.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. We are talking about navigating the Board of Veterans Appeals. So we have three amazing guests here today to talk about the Board of Veterans Appeals, but I want to ask Buck to really set the stage. We talked about our last show in August of 2024. My claim was denied, and now what? So can you build us up to where we're at now? What process did we already go through to get to the Board of Veterans Appeals? And then we'll ask our guest, when is the right time to make that decision? When do you say, okay, I've exhausted these appellate rights and now let's go into the next step? If you can do that for us.
Sure. And so a lot of the time when I end up meeting a veteran, it could be for the first time, and they come into our office and they say, hey, my claim is denied. What happens next? Very legitimate question. The very important aspect to look at is there are something called appellate rights, or rights to appeal. And that's, they have a year to appeal any VA decision, whether it's a denial or if the veteran simply disagrees with a rating or how the decision was made. So it's important that the veteran takes an action within that first year. So oftentimes I'm talking to a veteran across the table, and that's the discussion. I filed my claim, I have the denial letter here, what am I going to do? And really it comes down to, there's three options. You can introduce new evidence to the VA, ask them to reconsider that decision. You can point out a clear and unmistakable error and ask for a higher level review. But then there's an option where you take it away from the VA, and you're asking the Board of Veterans Appeals to take a look at it. And that's what we're going to really dig into today. What are those steps? What does that look like for a veteran who doesn't have that type of experience? So I'll start with Jim. Jim, if you're talking to a veteran for a first time, and they're coming in for advice, what are you saying when they say, "Hey, I got a denial. I want to appeal this"?
So what we look at first is getting the veteran the benefits that they're entitled to as quickly as possible. So we're going to look at it first from the approach of what we call the regional office level. And that would be, as you mentioned, perhaps doing a higher level review or a supplemental claim. And those generally move pretty quickly through the system and can take a matter of months. If it gets to the point where it's continuously being denied at that level, or it's a particularly complex case, we may look at moving to the next level, which is the Board of Veterans Appeals. The upside to the Board of Veterans Appeals is that the staff there is much more experienced. The staff at the regional office level is typically VSRs, Veteran Service Representatives, raters, generally are not legally trained. At the Board of Veterans Appeals, it's only attorneys and judges. So they're all legally trained. They're all, went to law school and so on. So they're better able to understand complex legal concepts and so on. So we find that at that level, generally speaking, even if you've been denied continuously at the regional office level, the Board of Veterans Appeals is a good option. You'll probably get a better decision if you have a good case. That said, the process can take a number of years. So we always try and start at the regional office level to get it moving quicker. There's some circumstances where at the Board of Veterans Appeals, a veteran would qualify to move quicker, and it could be actually a matter of months. In that case, we may go directly there.
So, in terms of the pros and cons, I think you laid it out for us really good there, Jim. One of the big cons that I constantly hear about in taking your claim up to the Board of Veterans Appeals is the time that it takes, right? Katrina, do you know what's being done about the wait times? Like, I'm a veteran and I've been through many denials through the VA, so I'm already months, if not years, into this marathon process, right? And now I say, you know what, I've exasperated all of my other options. I want to take it to the Board of Veterans Appeals. And usually that's when people are hit with it's going to take a year before you actually get to talk to anyone about this case. Is anything being done about that, or what can a veteran expect to encounter at that stage?
Well, whether anything is being done is probably way above my pay grade. I do know that the recently nominated chairman to fill the top seat at the Board of Veterans Appeals, the chairman of the board, the nominee who'd been submitted just pulled their nomination. So it's still an empty seat. And that'll take months, if not longer, to fill. So you have a vacuum. You have vice chairmen who are running the show, and this has happened before. Years ago, there was like a 7-year gap where there was no chairman of the board, but business went on as usual. So with respect to the delays, what is being done, I think they're doing what they can as best they can with what they have. I think it is a supply and demand issue. You are seeing more and more errors at the regional office level. That's only going to add to the growing pile of appeals at the board. So to Jim's point, it's something that you make a very strategic decision. Is this where we need to go? It's not something we ever do knee jerk, and I wouldn't recommend any veteran. If you can get the error made by the regional office level fixed at the regional office, that's definitely your first go-to. But as Jim referred to, then the next step is, okay, we've exhausted all of our options at the regional office, then the board does have different dockets. Each docket does move at a different pace. You have your direct review docket. If you are an average veteran who does not qualify for an advance on the docket, you're not going to get a decision within a year. It's probably going to be closer to 18 months time frame on the direct review docket. And I can go into the specifics, but the direct review moves the fastest. We call it the rocket docket. The next one is your evidence submission docket. That takes longer. We just got a decision yesterday on an appeal we filed on the evidence submission docket in December of 2023. So you're looking at about 2 years, and he's a younger veteran in his 50s. And then you have your hearing docket. That is going the slowest. We had a hearing for a client in March of 2023. We had the hearing. We waited for the hearing and had the hearing, and we still don't have a decision. Yes, frustration. So you got to think about your options and make a decision strategically accordingly. On the other hand, if you qualified for advance on the docket, they are incredibly respectful and mindful of those, and we get decisions very timely.
And I want to kind of open up this to the panel. Is there an avenue to take that is more effective than another one, or that it produces a better result?
It depends, to sound like a lawyer. It depends on it depends on what VA regional office did wrong in the first place. That dictates which docket you're going to choose. If it's a straight up problem and you don't have to submit anything else and you can explain it to the law judge in writing, the rocket docket, your direct review docket, is your best bet. And let me be clear, if you choose the wrong docket, there's no harm, no foul. You get a decision. Let's say the board denies it because they don't have the evidence they need to grant. You still have another year to choose a different, to keep the claim alive, file a supplemental claim and keep going. So it's not a fatal mistake if you choose the wrong docket. But the best way to go, Buck, really does depend on why it was denied at the regional office level.
If I can add, so the hearing, as Katrina mentioned, the hearing docket takes years. We're talking perhaps 4 to 5 years, believe it or not. Some veterans choose the hearing docket or would like to use the hearing docket because they're angry. They might have been, fighting their denial several times over several years, and they're like, I want to talk to a judge. I want to let them know how frustrated I am, and hopefully I'll get somewhere. But we find that the hearing docket is really unnecessary in most instances. For example, in our practice, we only do hearings in less than 5% of all of the board we do. We do mostly the direct docket, some evidence docket, but we avoid the hearing docket like the plague because it just takes years. And that's probably not something that's going to end because the whole process just is very difficult. So it's very important as an advocate that we explain that to the claimant. You don't really need a hearing, and a hearing probably isn't going to help you because in most cases, you're presenting the evidence, you're presenting an argument to a judge. Most of the time, they can read that and make a decision based on that. They don't really need to speak with anyone. And if you can, get that decision, let's say in 18 months, as Katrina mentioned, in the direct docket, rather than wait 4 to 5 years to talk to the judge, well, that's, once that's explained to the veteran, oftentimes they'll say, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a difference. So it's really important to understand those instances where a hearing will help. And there are some. We just did a hearing yesterday. But more often than not, we find that you really don't need a hearing because judges and attorneys are really good at reading your written advocacy.
It's very counterintuitive to how we feel as human beings, right? Like we want to talk to someone, we want to be heard. And so the idea of getting before a judge it sounds like, and again, people are going through months, if not years, before they get to this point. So they might be at the stage where like, I want to be heard, right? But what you're saying, Jim, is that you really have to evaluate the situation because there could be circumstances where we could write this up for a judge to read. You might not get to speak to that person directly, but we would in fact get you a decision, hopefully a favorable decision, a lot sooner than if you wait in line to see and speak and be heard by that judge. So thank you for that point. Zmae, I want to bring you in here for a second because you work for CalVet. And I think everyone on this call knows that California Department of Veterans Affairs is the best in the nation, right? We treat our veterans with so much care and consideration here in California. So where does CalVet come into this process with the Board of Veterans Appeals? Are you representing veterans at the Board of Veterans Appeals? What's the difference if CalVet represents me versus an attorney?
Yes, CalVet does assist with the board. We do have the appeals team and all our accredited representatives that's part of the appeals team, they do hearings. So there's usually a handoff coming from the county veteran service offices, right? When you start there, and if it's decided that the path they want to take is take it to the board, and if they choose a hearing, then at the time of the scheduled hearing, we will be the ones that will be helping them out and representing them at that point. The difference between us and accredited agents and lawyers is that state service organizations like CalVet and veteran service organizations, national service organizations like American Legion, Disabled American Veterans, they are free of charge, or we are free of charge, right? There's no charge on the veteran when we represent them. If I may go into a little bit of what do we do, right? And at the point that we represent them for the hearing, consider us a fresh set of eyes looking at the records, because the county is the county veteran service officers are the initial folks that help them. So we're a fresh eyes looking at the records. we are able to see what happened to the file. We have access to the record, read-only access. I just want to emphasize that, okay? The access that we have of VA systems or Veterans Affairs systems is read-only. We can't just print it and give it to people. I just want to make that clear. But yeah, when we do that, we have a chance to review. We speak with the veteran. We make contact. Once the case is assigned, our representatives will reach out, talk with the veteran. Then before the hearing, they'll reach out again to discuss based on what they reviewed, what the veterans told us. That way, we don't want to take up too much time during the hearing itself, right? So we want to make sure we got everything lined up.
Thank you, Zmae. And I'm trying to really go back to the three different, I think, dockets you were saying, right? The hearing docket, evidence review, and direct review. Is that correct? That's correct. So you can start at one that you think is going to be the fastest route, the best route, and then elevate to the next level? Is that a general progression if you're denied? Anyone can answer that, please.
I see Katrina shaking her head here.
I can't see. I hoping it's shaking her head yes, but I couldn't see that for a second. No,
Oh,
shaking
I'm
it.
shaking
No.
my head
All
no.
right.
Well, so it's complicated in that, again, I hate sounding like a lawyer, but it depends. It depends on when you filed it's called a notice of appeal to the Board of Veterans Appeals. It's a VA form 10182. You can change dockets, but only within a certain period of time from the time you filed your VA form 10182, or from when the the regional office level made its last decision. There is a certain point of time, though, that, say, for example, you chose the hearing lane 3 years ago and you're watching this television show and you're like, oh, I don't want to wait 2 more years, I'm switching. You can't. There is a certain point of time where you have to stay where you chose. And the notices that VA sends out, I think, provide some information about that. But it's not an elevation, Josh, to your point. It's one of 3 options at the Board of Veterans Appeals that the veteran can choose which docket they want to place their appeal on. And that decision is very much based first and foremost on what was the decision down below, what was the error you think the regional office level people made, and that's going to somewhat dictate which docket you choose to put your appeal on. And a quick example, if let's say they granted service connection but assigned August 1st, 2025 as an effective date, but you've been continuously pursuing your benefits for 5 years, that's what's called an effective date issue. That's a strictly legal issue. There's not a whole lot of evidence that speaks to it. You either meet the legal criteria for the earlier effective date or you don't. That would be something we would pursue on the direct review docket and ask a judge to look at that and explain the error. On the other hand, the evidence submission docket, if you have more evidence that you are tired of dealing with the regional office and you want the board to look at, then you would submit that to the evidence submission docket at the board. And then, of course, the hearing. And to Elena's point, you're absolutely right. The frustration is palpable amongst the veteran community and they want to be heard. But again, you need to be selective. You need to be choosy. It depends on the issue as to whether it really needs a hearing, where you really need to be seen and heard, or can you make your case in a written argument and get a decision much sooner. That's really the key there. But yeah, to switch, I just want to be loud and clear that listeners today are going, well, I want to get out of that docket and switch. You really need to make sure you have the option today to still switch. You might, and then again, you might not.
Thank you, Katrina.
Yeah.
That is so complicated, and I'm glad there's folks out like you three out there and many others throughout California that can help. One term that I don't think we got into too much was, can you give us some examples of how you'd be advanced on docket?
Sure. So the first one is easy and automatic, and it is one of the best parts of the more sophisticated system at the Board of Veterans Appeals. On the VA Form 10182, the veteran or the appellant, be it the veteran or the surviving spouse or a family member, they have to include their date of birth. That is automatically read by the Board of Veterans Appeals computer system, and if they are 75 or older, they are automatically advanced on the docket. They don't have to do anything else. Their date of birth speaks for itself, and it is automatically advanced. The other ways that an appellant at the Board of Veterans Appeals can have their appeal advanced does need to be submitted with a motion requesting to be advanced on the docket with supporting documentation. The other ways to be advanced on the docket would be severe financial hardship. Again, must be submitted, supported with documentation. And an example that the board puts in their letter is if you're being evicted from a home, mortgage foreclosure, inability to meet your basic utility needs, water, electricity, things like that. That's your severe financial hardship. And then failing health. And this is really important. To be clear, every veteran filing a disability claim is disabled to a certain extent. Failing health needs to be submitted with a medical statement explaining the prognosis of the veteran's medical condition or the claimant, the surviving spouse, for example, but it needs to be terminal. Prognosis is grim, failure to thrive, something that is really end of life type, incurable cancer, things like that are going to be your basis. Again, must be submitted with a medical statement by a medical doctor with the license number to explain the failing health. And there's also natural disasters, flooding, hurricanes, things like that, wildfires here in California, those would qualify also for advance on the docket if your immediate home has been affected by natural disaster.
Hey, Zmae, I wanted to ask you, you'd mentioned earlier that typically when CalVet gets your case, it's kind of referred to them from a county veteran service office. Is that the only way that a veteran can get in touch with CalVet for this assistance? Or how would you recommend or advise a veteran to get in touch with your office?
No, that's not the only way that they can get a hold of us. We actually do have walk-in hours in our office here in Oakland. So they can either come into our office and chat with us, or they can give us a call. And we do have folks that work with veterans in the office. We can also work with them on the phone. It's just that is with the area that we cover, right? Oh, there's a lot of counties that we work with, so I feel like it's our biggest workload is the handover coming from the counties, but we do help veterans out in person and on the phone.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Zmae. And I want to make sure that everyone understands Zmae works for the California Department of Veterans Affairs. So it's very easy to find. If you Google California Department of Veterans Affairs, you can find the regional offices in Oakland, San Diego, and Los Angeles, right, Zmae? Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Katrina, for that explanation. That makes a lot of sense about the advance of docket. I can imagine there's veterans and family members watching the show now like, I possibly do not have 4 to 5 years due to maybe a multiple reasons that you listed. So I'm glad that the VA is understanding that. I'm glad there's people out here that can, advance on the docket.
And just real quick, I wanted to ask before we run out of time in this segment, once the judge gets a hold of this, they can grant it, they can deny it, but also there's something called a remand. Jim, can you tell me what a remand is at the Board of Veterans Appeals?
Oh, Buck, that's a great question. So what a remand is that the board judge doesn't feel that they have enough information to make a decision. And oftentimes that'll be because what they call a duty to assist. So they'll decide that the regional office, when they adjudicated the claim, failed to do something. They might have failed to get an examination for the veteran. They may have failed to get all of the veteran's personnel records, things like that. In other words, they look at it and say, we don't have enough information. As much as we'd like to grant this claim, we need more. So they send that back to the regional office with specific instructions to say, perhaps to get a compensation and pension examination, to get more records, things like that. The problem with that situation is that, unfortunately, so now when it goes back on a remand, the regional office will then do what's directed by the board, and they make another decision. So hopefully within a couple of months, they'll look at it again and they'll make a favorable decision. And then basically you're done, right? You've won your claim, so everything's great. But oftentimes what they'll do is they'll make another decision, but that decision is still unfavorable to the veteran. In that case, in order to go back to the Board of Veterans' Appeals, the veteran has to start over. So they get to the back of the line. So they might have waited 3 years to get to the board, and then it gets remanded back, and then it goes back to the board, and they might have to wait another 2 to 3 years. So remands, so remand isn't a denial. So it's beneficial that way, because the denial is the worst thing. But we don't really like remands either, because they just oftentimes just delay the process even more. So we always seek to, when at the board, we try really hard to get a favorable decision, a grant from the board first time out, because remands really slow things down.
Thank you, Jim. That's a great explanation. When we come back, we'll conclude our conversation. Stay with us.
Honestly, I'm not really sure why I'm calling. It's just...
I'm having nightmares.
My husband and I, we're just fighting a lot.
I can't get any sleep.
Things just keep getting worse, and it's starting to feel like I can't do this by myself anymore.
We could use some help figuring things out.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you called. Why don't you tell me more about what's going on? There's no wrong reason to reach out for crisis support. Whatever you're going through, the Veterans Crisis Line is here to help. Visit veteranscrisisline.net to learn more.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. We're talking about navigating the Board of Veterans Appeals. Well, I hope everyone kind of understands what the Board of Veterans Appeals is and where it falls on the process of what to do after your claim's been denied. I've learned a lot today. During the break here, Buck, he's like, hey, we need to talk about this. We didn't get into it in that last segment. That's okay. We have 20 minutes left. And during this segment, we're going to talk about things like pro tips, extremely important, how to prepare for your hearing, how to prepare for any docket that you're going to be on. And then probably the big question is, well, how successful are any of these appeals? And I'm going to leave that to, actually, let's turn it to you, Buck. What do we need to, what did we not capture in that last segment?
Well, I'm really infatuated with the idea of the hearing, talking to the judge. You know, the veterans are often apprehensive going into this, and my question to actually all three of the panelists is, when do you advise a veteran to take that hearing step, and you know, when is a veteran's testimony important toward getting that claim granted?
Oh, hold on. Zmae, let's go Zmae.
Oh, Zmae, you go.
Okay. Well, it's that's tricky. If we're starting over from when we're just trying to assist them with filing the 10182 or the NOD, then we'd like to, the ones that we veer towards hearings would probably be the ones where the testimony of the veteran would be very vital, or the appellant would be very vital to win the case. Right? It's not something that's, you know, it's not in the file, but we need their testimony. That would be the biggest thing. If there's a need for the testimony, yes, let's go ahead with the hearing. Otherwise, let's explore other options before we choose the hearing or instead of choosing the hearing. And if I may, because I'm going to kind of link it to something that Jim said earlier, right? When he said we don't like remands because we want grants, and I agree with that. And if we're linking it to that, I want to say remands usually happens because there's missing evidence, right? So when you're at the hearing part of it, you want to listen to your representative. Because a lot of times, well, I guess especially for us, because we are new to them, right? The county is the first people that they speak with. But listen to the representatives, because we're here to represent you. We're trying to put your best foot forward. And it doesn't help if you fight us or if you don't listen to us, right? So listen to us. And we will tell you what is needed, what evidence is needed so that we can win the case. Because we all want to win. We don't want to prolong the case, or we don't want to have the appellants wait too long for a decision by going through the remand process, right? Or getting a denial. We want the grant, so please listen to us.
It's hard because it's a very complex system, and I think veterans can get into this and feel like I'm underwater. I don't know which way is up or down, and there's already a sense of confusion. There's already a sense of I'm having to fight the system so much, and are you a part of the system? Are you really here to help me? So I think that's really good feedback, Zmae. I want to ask Jim and Katrina, what's some practical advice that you have for veterans who are going through this and might have some of that, concern that I don't know if my advocate is really my advocate here? And also, do you have a story of a veteran who took the advice, made the right decision, and really turned their case around, turned it into a success story?
I'll let the birthday boy go first.
I wanted you to go ladies first. Okay. Well, to the second question, we have so many examples of, because again, all we do is appeal. So we have so many examples on a regular basis of success. But to your first question, it's really important, and also to Zmae is spot on. It's really about the veteran not fighting. There's a lot of misinformation out there on YouTube, some of these claims on accredited claims companies. So veterans often feel like they're getting this mishmash of information they might get on AI. And then they come to an accredited advocate and they're like, well, yeah, but I want to do it this way because, the guy on YouTube said it, and so on and so forth. But they need to understand that they're dealing with experts, right? Everybody in this panel is most certainly an experienced expert. So, and the things that we may recommend may not make sense to them, but it's based upon our looking at the whole file, our experience, just that's what we do. We're here to help. So a veteran really needs to, if they engage an advocate, like a CVSO or an agent or attorney, they need to trust them. They really need to say, okay, kind of hand it off. Like Katrina likes to tell clients, okay, now we got this. Go get a hobby. Don't worry about it. Go, if you got something else, we're gonna bring this home for you. So that's my best advice, is really just trust your advocate to make the right decisions, and even though they may seem a little bit unusual.
Okay, so Josh, Buck, write that down. Yep. Next episode is going to be go get a hobby.
Go get a hobby. I think a great plug for all three of you is you all train us. So that's why we said let's have these experts on the show. Zmae, you train potential VSRs to be accredited, and the two of you, Katrina and Jim, you train at the the California Association of County Veteran Service Officers conferences 3 times a year. So that means there's probably 800 to 1,000 people running around knowing who you are. So when we're telling you to go to see Zmae or Alberto or Melania and down in San Diego or you two, That's because we trust them. So sorry I built on that trust a lot, but I think it's so important. You do it every day, we do it every day, so we're gonna tell you, go trust these folks. Thank you, I'm off.
So Elena, I'll add to what everyone else, all awesome advice. I think two things. One, what we ask every individual who calls our office, they send us their documents and I say, okay, what did VA do wrong? And best advice, if your answer is something like, well, my neighbor is getting 100% and I should too, that's going to be a problem. Every veteran's claim stands on its own evidence and its own facts. Full stop. Period.
Yeah.
You
Or
are not-
even,
Oh, go ahead.
Even Katrina, I've heard my buddy in the same unit, right? I mean, you might even have been in the same unit with someone, gone through this to the same combat zone and come back with completely different scenarios, right?
Yeah. And the next best tip is look at the reasons VA denied your claim. It's going to be one of three issues generally. Either they said, nope, this medical condition is not connected to service, or nope, you don't have a diagnosis, or something, nope, this never happened in service. Those basic reasons, you gotta peel through VAs. Sometimes there's a lot of template language in the decision, but you got to get to the heart of why they denied your claim. It's in there. And then figure out, okay, are they right or are they wrong? No one is helping this system we're all working in just blindly, well, I want to be heard. You need to understand and be able to articulate either in writing or at a hearing what VA got wrong, and understand that that's what you want the judge to fix. If you start just ranting in writing or during a hearing, you're not helping yourself. But to your second question, this is a great example. We had a client who served in the Navy and on a ship, the USS Bonhomme Richard, during Vietnam era, but not within, he was never presumed by VA to be exposed to anything. He has colon cancer. He told VA he thought his colon cancer was due to his exposure to asbestos on the ship. The board, before we represented him, the Board of Veterans Appeals denied his claim. And if you read through their decision, they actually said, we don't think this veteran was exposed to anything more than the average amount of asbestos that everybody's exposed to on a ship. Didn't see that. So then he contacted us and we dug in and found the ship history that showed that it had been dry docked when he was assigned to it, and that he was part of the dry dock repair team, had him do a whole new detailed statement. We gave that to the regional office level. They denied it. We just sent it to the board in early August 2025. He is over 75, and with this new information and evidence that was in the record, was able to show he was actually exposed to a substantial amount of asbestos, had the medical opinion that explained what the asbestos exposure does, and it is related to colon cancer, and the board just granted it last week. So that's a great example. You have to go back and look at other decisions that the agency has made, figure out what they're not accepting, what they're not getting, and really hone in on that and get the right evidence that addresses those answers that VA has said so far. And I was a little nervous because the board, once they make a decision, it's kind of like your mom or dad. They're like, which part of this do you not get? But we were able to show them, no, he was actually exposed to a substantial amount with military documented history of what the ship being dry docked, and then his statements and his military records lined up with the dry dock period for the Bonhomme Richard, and that really brought it home.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, as you're sharing the story, we got a question in on Facebook, and so veterans asking, are those attorneys who represent veterans to the higher level appellate courts, do they operate under different regulations than an attorney would, like at your law firm, and specifically this veteran is sharing their opinion. They think that those attorneys, maybe some other attorneys out there, are billing at a significantly higher rate. Is there a standard rate, or what should a veteran know when they're looking at law firms in terms of how to choose one?
Jimmy?
So the VA, what VA considers to be a reasonable rate for an attorney, let's say at the Board of Veterans Appeals level, is 20% of the retroactive benefits. So it's only their back pay, nothing moving forward. However, they allow up to 33.33%, which is on the high end. Anything above 33.33, then the Office of General Counsel will probably pitch a fit. But there is a range, and some of it is some of the larger law firms with big overheads, perhaps are more experienced. They will charge at that higher level, but there's also a lot of law firms that charge at the 20% level as well.
Thank you, Jim.
If I could, I'd like to circle back. Katrina, you kind of referenced if the judge does deny the claim, is there any type of recourse for a veteran if the Board of Veterans Appeals denies the claim?
Absolutely. And yeah, to the theme of this, if we haven't said it clear enough, if you think you're right, don't give up. Keep fighting. But if the Board of Veterans Appeals denies your claim, you have several options. One is, and since February 19, 2019, the the AMA is the Appeals Modernization Act, went into effect in February 2019, and that gives appellants who have been denied by the Board of Veterans Appeals two different options. You can circle back and go back to the regional office level within 1 year of the board decision and continue the claim with a supplemental claim form. That's VA form 20-0995 with new and relevant evidence, and continue. That is, the supplemental claim is considered continuously pursuing your claim even after the board denied it, and you have a year to come back into the regional office level and continuously pursue with a supplemental claim. The other option is, and Elena, to your point, there are several levels of appellate practice in our veterans world. Above the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Board of Veterans Appeals is part of the agency. It's the highest appeal level within VA, but above VA is the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. That is Article 1 federal court located in Washington, D.C., and its sole jurisdiction is to review decisions issued by the Secretary by the Board of Veterans Appeals, not regional office level. You can't leapfrog. But if the Board of Veterans Appeals denies your appeal and you want to take it up to the next court level, that is the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, but you only have 120 days to take it to the next level, to the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. And those lawyers have a whole different system of being paid. So yeah, so when people confuse the court with the board, and it's easy to get them confused, it's two completely different animals. But veterans who are represented by lawyers at the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, those lawyers are paid by what's called EJA fees, and under the understanding that the Secretary of VA gets a lawyer, so too should then the appellant who has come to court, and the lawyer only gets paid if they prevail, and they're paid.
Okay. So shout out to, not to me, that wasn't my question. That was from the Outagamie Veteran Service Office who's tuning in. But thanks for clearing that up. Katrina, EJA fees, can you just real quick, what's the acronym?
EJA, Equal Access to Justice Act.
Got it. Thank you.
And so, I think Josh's follow-up question would be, well, which one do you choose? Would be, it depends on the board's decision and why did they deny. Again, typically our office would appeal to the court, the Veterans Court, if they denied and it was a legal error that we think they got wrong. Again, effective dates, just legal issues. But if it's a factual issue where additional evidence would help, that's typically going to get resolved better and faster by pursuing a supplemental claim at the regional office level.
Thank you. This is some complicated stuff. And again, I'm glad that you guys are here to help explain it. But really, is there any way to compute how successful any of these are? Like, I don't want to go through all this if it's just going to be, of course we do. We want you to, because the better we get at it, the better you all get at it, the better be successful claims. But what are the success rates? If anyone dares to tackle that.
We get that
maybe I'll
question a
start.
lot. Sorry, Zmae. So we get that question a lot. Well, why should I hire you? How good are you? Well, first of all, I'm still here 30 years later. We're still here 30 years later, but it's not a fair question. Zmae's office operates completely different than a private law office like us. We can be choosy. We can say, we can't help you and here's why. I believe Zmae's office and most of your veteran service offices, they have a policy, and I firmly believe in this, that they have to help everyone. And thank goodness, because again, overhead, blah, 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 whatever the reason is, there are different reasons that a veteran can't get assistance from a lawyer or a veteran advocate who's accredited, such as a claims agent, whereas Zmae's office is ideal for helping them. But the success rate is, so that's why that's a skewed question, because we take cases where we believe we can add value, and we take cases where we do agree VA made a mistake. And let me be clear, VA denials are not always wrong, right? They deny correctly a lot of the time. Our pool of applicants is somewhat skewed also because they all got denied. We don't talk to the ones who got granted. So that's the next thing is we can say no, and we can say we actually agree with VA. They got it right to deny, and here's why. And so that's why the question of success rate is a skewed question.
Thank you. Zmae, we got about 40 seconds. Is there anything you have to add to that, or anything for the entire show?
Yes. So since Katrina mentioned that, right? So we don't get to choose, but that's where it's important that you talk to us as we're going through it. Because if you've already waited 3.5 years before the hearing and you have the opportunity to talk to us and we're telling you what we're seeing in the file, listen, please. You can talk, we will listen to you, but also listen to us. Because it's important to get the evidence that we need to convert that into a grant. Otherwise, without the evidence necessary, if we don't hit the boxes that the VA or the BVA is looking at the board, right, we're not going to win. So it's important to have the dialogue, to be able to listen, and to be able to also be able to share what you think you've missed, but also listen.
Thank you so much, Zmae. Thank you, everyone. That is our discussion. I want to thank all our guests today. Remember, when the VA denies your claim, it is not the end of the story. You still have options. We hope you have found our conversation educational. We leave you with some resources if you want to dig a little deeper. For help filing any VA claim, a county veteran service office is a great place to start. Find one near you at nacvso.org. Find your service record at National Archives. Just go to archives.gov and click on Veterans Service Records. Swords to Plowshares can help veterans in many ways, including legal help with VA claims. Find them at swordstoplowshares.org. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch these episodes and many others on our YouTube channel, Veterans Voices of Contra Costa. So be sure to subscribe. Click on the link or scan the QR code to find us on all our social media channels. Our next show will air on Wednesday, October 8th at noon. We'll be talking about veterans and entrepreneurship. You won't want to miss it. To all of our veterans and their families, thank you for serving. To all who have tuned in, thanks for watching and have a great day.